Okay, so you've got China doing bilateral deals with Russia, Brazil, and they seem to be at least diversifying themselves out of having that being dominated by the U.S. dollar. So this is part of what you're talking about. Let's say the U.S. gives up its primary role as the central global reserve currency, and we just see that role being played by different countries, and there's a tremendous amplitude. And would it be correct to say that you see volatility in these markets increasing going forward?
There sure will be a volatility in the markets, but one interesting thing is what the United States has really got a free ride on and for its deficit is its military spending. For over half a century, ever since the Korean War, the U.S. payments deficit's been largely military. And what China, I think, wants to do is saying, look, if the dollar can't get a free ride, then it's going to have to roll back its military spending. So there will be much less volatility militarily in a world where countries can't get a free ride. And I think that really is what countries are thinking about. They want to stop the Americans spending dollars to surround them with military bases to force them to take the dollar. They're not going to let that happen, and they finally drawn the line. They said, we've had enough. We're stopping your free lunch, and we're stopping your military free lunch. So
it's kind of like the reverse of the opium trade. Remember back in the UK empire, they got the Chinese to smoke opium.
Indeed.
So now the Chinese are forcing the Americans to smoke their own belly button lint in faulty fiat garbage currency.
Or they're taking America off opium, the opium of the dollar standard.
But if you take America off opium, I mean, how will the economy grow? I mean, isn't the American economy...
That's a big problem. And you could say the same for Britain without the financial... All of Britain's growth in the last 10 years has been in the financial services. And now these are being wound down. So what are people going to do in New York City and Wall Street and London? What on earth are they going to do? They're going to have to earn their living.
So the recent strength in these markets you would characterize as kind of a false breakout, or what is euphemistically known as a dead cat bounce.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So the chimera of strength that people, let's say, in CNBC and the cheerleaders on Wall Street are talking about right now, by your estimate, it seems to be fairly short-lived because the turbulence and the problems that were characteristic of the past 2 years are still very much with us. Is that a fair statement?
That's quite fair. They're trying to get somebody else to buy all the bad debts that they're holding, and if they can convince people that everything's okay, then they can dump all their bad investments on them.
Just to give us a rough idea of how much the suckers have swallowed in this forced foie gras model of forced consumption of toxic debt. What is the current ballpark figure in terms of how much cash actually there's the bailout? What's the current bailout number? Any idea?
They've spent $12 trillion so far. They've created essentially a whole new power elite that'll be the ruling families for the next century. They've printed this money, and it hasn't been inflationary in terms of goods and services.
Right.
None of this $12 trillion is going to be spent on commodities. It's all being spent being stashed abroad or buying whatever they can get. And they say $12 trillion isn't enough. They say, as far as the eye can see, more and more and more money. Basically, all the growth is going to have to go to pay the financial sector, and there will be no growth for industry, for agriculture, or for labor. The class war is back in business with a vengeance that it hasn't been seen in a century.
All right, maybe you can help me, walk me through this for a second, because I touched on this a little bit earlier. J.P. Morgan buys Washington Mutual, and because of the distressed economic collapse that was happening at the end of last year. Now, J.P. Morgan just announced that due to some accounting mechanism that they unearthed that's been on there around for 4 years, they're going to start booking incredible gains as a result of that acquisition of Washington Mutual.
The gain's basically a tax loss. Suppose you borrow $100 and buy a company that has a $100,000 tax loss. All of a sudden, for paying $100, you've been able to be tax-free for the rest of your life. Wall Street has made itself tax-free for the rest of their life. And in America, we had the hotel queen, Leona Helmsley, say only the little people pay taxes.
Right.
Well, she was a tax evader, and she was sent to jail for that. But now Wall Street says to the rest of the country, only the non-financial sector pays taxes. Only employees pay taxes. We've bought tax exemption for the next 50 years. The rich will never have to pay taxes again. They have a zero rate now. The tax is now on labor.
Yeah, so it reminds me back to the savings and loan crisis. A company like Revlon, if I remember, was able to acquire busted assets from the government and shelter taxes for a long, long time. And Ron Perlman has a great reputation for business acumen, but it seemed like he was just vacuuming up tax losses from a government-sanctioned profitability scheme. And what's that got to do with the really free market capitalism? It sounds like crony capitalism and kleptocracy, really, more than anything that anyone would equate to a fair system.
That's what the free market has become, kleptocracy. You got it in one word. That's exactly it. It's all in the small print, and it's not the kind of free market that Adam Smith was talking about. Smith said that whenever a lot of businessmen get together, you're pretty sure they're going to conspire against the public interest.
Timothy Geithner's got a new plan. You know, he's like David Henning. He's got a plan he's pulling out of his top hat every 5 minutes as he, consistently pulls the wool over the America's eyes with this leisure domain and accounting fraud. But what's the latest, just for giggles? What's this plan he's got cooked up now?
He really has the same plan again and again, but he has a different name for each time. And if people keep saying that your plan fails, then you keep pulling it out, exactly the same plan, exactly a giveaway to the major campaign contributors who are paying your salary, and you just give it another name. So he doesn't change the plan, he changes the title of the plan.
All right, so should Obama get rid of Geithner?
If they want the country to develop, but the problem is there are 10 Geithners. He's only a clone. In order to get a position at the Federal Reserve or a position in the government, you have to be a clone for your industry. It used to be that government would take people and regulate industries, but now the government takes regulators from the industry to be regulated.
All right, Michael Hudson, we're going to have to cut it off there. Thanks for being on the Edge. Hope to have you again back soon.
Always a pleasure.
And that's been this edition of On the Edge. I'm Max Keiser. Next week, special guest, the man who knows the truth from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones. Until then, bye, y'all.